The Bored Ape Yacht Club's parent company, Yuga Labs, just had the biggest day in NFT history by far. Nearly $1 billion in volume went through Ethereum and OpenSea within a very short amount of time. That's right, guys. We are talking about the Otherside and the land that was being sold called OtherDeeds. Right now, there's nearly 100,000 OtherDeeds available on OpenSea, and there is a plethora of different traits, attributes, sediments, all kinds of different features that these include, which make it very, very difficult to navigate if you're looking to pick something up on the secondary market. I was having an extremely hard time figuring out how to value these things. So after countless hours of research from not only myself, but also my team, we came up with as much information as possible right now to kind of break down what everything means in Otherside deeds. So you don't have to. We're going to bring it to you in this video. If that sounds good to you guys, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Like this video. Let's get 500 likes on this video. Please like, challenge. Come on, guys. Let's do this. And let's get into it. So guys, after the reveal came, I started looking at these things thinking that I could just go in there and find some good, attractive lands that would make sense and maybe sell some of the ones I had in order to get some better positioned ones. And what that means was really, really hard to try to understand. Was it the location? Because the map is enormous. And at the center of the map, you have the actual Bored Ape Yacht Club. So of course, one would think that being as close to that as possible is probably valuable, and that is probably true. But there's a lot of other things to look at when deciding what is valuable. Now, before I go into all the different aspects that come on one of these NFTs, let me tell you a little bit about the vision that Yuga Labs has promised for the Otherside. They tell you that every company is trying to produce the metaverse, which is true. We've seen Facebook or Meta trying to produce a metaverse. We've seen countless different crypto projects telling us that they're producing the metaverse as well. And Yuga Labs knows this. So they say that what they're doing isn't creating a metaverse, but they're creating a meta RPG, essentially a meta game. And they want to do this big. And guys, let's face it, they have the budget to do this. Yuga Labs is now worth billions of dollars. On average, usually they're making over $15 million a day. Financing is not an issue. All right, before we begin, I know that Elon, you happen to pick up quite a large amount of apes. As you've shown us on your profile picture, it's an impressive collection, man. Which means, of course, you're gonna wanna own some of the best land on the other side. And if you want to know the best places to go, make sure you hit me up. You can just message me on Twitter. I'm pretty sure you know how to navigate that place. All right, guys, let's dive in here on the Otherside website. So basically, they're just saying that, this is going to be huge and massive, what I already talked about. And this gives you some examples of these different images that come on your NFT. And they give you all the traits down here and things like that. The Otherside is part galaxy and part archipelago, with islands extending from the biogenic swamp at the center and rolling outwards to the infinite expanse. There are 5 sediments that lands are built upon: biogenic swamp, chemical goo, rainbow atmos, cosmic dream, and the infinite expanse. Your OtherDeed is the key to a unique blend of environments, sediment, and treasures, some with resources, some home to powerful artifacts, and on a very few, a koda will roam. Kodas are the new creation from Yuga Labs. And if you guys don't know, really the commercial relationship is that the other deeds were sold from Animoca brands, where the kodas are the work of Yuga Labs. And we know from the roadmap, there's more coming. We'll talk about that in just a bit. Now we're starting to see different rarities between them. And we also know that the last 100 minted are called mega kodas, which have some superpowers. Now, this was also confusing too to me, and you'll see why in a bit. But basically, there's resources on some of the lands. There's 4 points of your block or your piece of land where these resources might exist: north, east, south, and west. And from what we're saying here is that some of them consist of metal or ore, some of them are root or wood, some of them are stone, and one is anima, which is research, which I guess is interesting. Maybe aliens are dropping some knowledge onto you, which probably will be very, very helpful within the game. So there are treasures and tools. These are artifacts on your NFT. You will see them listed as artifacts. Some of them are super rare and they will never be able to be created or minted in the game ever again. And this is the really frustrating part, is we don't know which ones yet will only be able to be in existence now versus which ones will have future inflation. One of the interesting things about these NFTs, guys, is that they're going to evolve over time. They are dynamic. You have a nice little guide here, which shows you quickly where to draw your attention when you're scavenging through OpenSea looking for a deed. At the top, you have basically an icon here that represents the sediment your land has. Each sediment has a unique frame that goes with it. So a really quick way to identify the sediment is just looking at the color here. So far, there's nothing that indicates what the sediment will be used for. We know the rarity of the sediment, but we don't really know yet how that will affect in game. We can assume that the rarer ones will be more valuable, but it's really hard to know at this point. The dots here underneath the name up here, they represent land rarity tiers 1 through 5. So 1 dot being the least rare and 5 being the most rare. Now, there are less of the tier 5 lands because a tier 5 land is more developed. The question here is, how much value do you assign to something that's more developed? And that's hard to know right now because we don't know how much resources and time will be required to take your land from very undeveloped, like a 1 tier, to very developed, like a tier 5 land. This is what they are calling a tier 1 land. Let me show you a tier 3. So you can just see it's literally the same, but you can see that different things have matured more. They've grown more. Now let me show you a tier 5. So tier 5, it's literally the same thing, but just way more evolved. Just looks like the natural environment that has taken time to grow. So some other things to look at here is you got the name, the land name, and the name of the sediment here. You've got if your land has an artifact or not, it'll tell you here and what the artifact is. And then the big one is, does your land have a koda included on it? And if it does, what's the koda number? And this is another thing that's confusing here. These dots under the resources are the rarity tiers. Let me show you this is confusing. Let's go down to look at the resources. But let's go to something like Northern Resource. Let's take, for example, something that's not very rare at all, this silo silk. What they're saying on the website tells you that this resource, if it has 3 stars, should be the most rare of a resource. If we go and click on this NFT, for example, we could see that this one has this same resource, silo silk, tier 1, which is what you might expect because it was the most common resource on the list. But they also have the exact same resource, this silo silk, with a 3 tier ratings. It's the same logic behind the tier rating for the environment, where it went from 1 to 5, was essentially how developed that was. It's hard to assign a value here when you're literally talking about potentially 1 to 10 ETH difference in the amount of tier that you might get for a resource. Now, you have to ask yourself, because all of the resources on your land will replenish, what does that mean? So if I get the silo silk and it's a tier 1, does that just mean that it will replenish slower and the tier 3 will replenish faster? That could be. Or does it just mean that these resources have to hit a certain maturity point before they can be mined and sold off or utilized? And if that's the case, then all that means from a tier 1 to a tier 3 is that probably the day the game launches, if you have a tier 3, you'll probably be able to use that resource right away. Whereas in the tier 1 or 2, you might have to wait a little bit of time before you can use it. So you can see so far why I've been banging my head against the wall and trying to dig for information. Now, here is a bit of speculation coming into this, but I think it's incredibly important to pay attention to. With 100,000 units in the market today, in I think it's August or September, there's going to be another 100,000 units introduced to the marketplace. So potentially 2xing the supply or 100% in inflation, there might be a very cryptic reason why this section is called your key. Think about that for a second. Your key. Shape the future. Your OtherDeed is your key to helping build the metaverse. Landowners are creators and can participate in demos, prototypes, test builds, in-person events, and contests that help bring the other side to life. What does this mean? We know from the history of Yuga Labs that if you held one of the original Bored Apes, like you would have then gotten your mutant apes out of it, then you would have gotten your Kennel Club apes out of it, and then you would have gotten your ape tokens, which were worth a tremendous amount of money for just owning one ape, like hundreds of thousands of dollars per ape. And then now you would have gotten your Otherdeeds land from that without having to spend any extra money on all of that stuff. So what do we think is going to happen moving forward? My theory is that they're going to distribute them to anybody who currently holds an Otherdeed and has been active in participation. Because what we see in places like Sandbox and Decentraland is we see squatting. People just went and bought a bunch of land and they're just doing nothing with it, which doesn't lead to a very healthy, active metaverse environment. If you're building a metaverse, you want people to be there, go there, build businesses, build things. It makes a lot of sense to me that they would incentivize those who are actively helping to create a robust and fun environment inside of Otherside. With that same thought process, I'm also trying to decide what should I do about these kodas, because I think the kodas are probably going to be very, very valuable. As we see right now, I think it's 9,999. Those last 99 are the extremely rare one-of-ones. They're called mega kodas. Now, the floor price on those is pretty huge. I think the cheapest one you can get right now is 220 ETH or something, which means that then you could buy 10 of the floor price kodas for the same price, more or less. So let's take the example of Bored Ape Yacht Clubs and understand what might be the best path. So VN Capital says, Otherside Alpha. NFT owners can choose to detach kodas from the original land and reattach them to a new piece of land. So after this koda hunt madness, what's going to happen? Whales will purchase land in prime location and reattach rare kodas and artifacts to it. Gives you examples here of land 9, land 10, and land 19, all very, very close to the central location, being purchased for a lot. They were all bare land without artifacts, without kodas, because it was the best value for the best location of land. Now, let me show you just how enormous this map is as well. You can see that here in the very, very middle, this is the Bored Ape Yacht Club here in the center. The land deed numbers 0 through 10,000 all went to Bored Ape Yacht Club holders. Then the next 20,000 were for Mutant Ape holders, and then the rest were for the public sales and partners and things like that. So as we start to zoom out, you can start to see the enormity of this map. And if there's one thing that I really know for sure in all metaverse types of plays, everyone's always looking at what will be the best location. Where will you have the most foot traffic? Because the future of monetization in a metaverse is how can you attract people to come do whatever it is that you're selling or come participate in whatever you have. You know, that's one idea. While people are out there looking for, you know, the most densely built up piece of land, I think that they might be forgetting how dynamic these are and the ability for you to go ahead and build up your blank piece of land exactly how you want it with whatever kind of artifacts and things like that. So let's talk about a bit about kodas for a second. And that was the first 100,000 pieces of land that dropped had these kodas on there. But what's going to happen for the second 100,000 pieces of land if they're not going to make any more kodas? You guys can easily find this on the internet if you just Google Yuga Labs deck, and you will see on one of the pages it says revenue channels for 2022. And on there, there's just one word that you don't see anywhere else in the deck, but it says goblins. I'm going to make the assumption here that on the next 100,000 pieces of land, instead of kodas, we will see goblins. Take that for what you will. So I'm going to be completely transparent here with you guys. The reason I made this video is because I really wanted to know this information myself. In my opinion, right now, ideally, I will be looking for the land that is the most centrally located, and knowing the fact that I can add things like artifacts and kodas to it later if I want to. The other thing that might be interesting to look for are really rare resources, because I do not believe that you'll be able to add resources to your land later. And of course, there's a lot of things that we still do not know. So if you guys are interested in seeing another video, because we went deep into Yuga Labs and everything that they're doing and go into a lot of things that haven't been covered yet and a lot of assumptions that we're making about the way it might develop, let me know in the comments below. Also, guys, I need your help too, please. I told you what I know. I would really appreciate it if you tell me anything that I missed or anything that you guys learn. Let's create a dialogue here. Would be amazing. Thank you guys so much. I will catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.